That was all Clara Whitmore had left. 3 days before the bank took her land, her home, everything her father built with his own hands. And the man who promised to save her, her own brother, had already vanished. But what Clara didn't know was that someone else had been watching her fall apart. Not the bank, not the town. A man waiting for her to lose everything. And when a quiet cowboy finally stepped forward and said, "If he broke every promise, maybe you need someone who doesn't." No one in Silver Creek believed him, because they didn't know who he really was. And before this was over, that promise would start a fire, expose a conspiracy, and force Clara to choose between survival or trusting a stranger who might be lying to her. The morning frost still clung to the boardwalks of Silver Creek when Clara Whitmore shoved open the doors of the First Territorial Bank hard enough to rattle the glass. The bell above the frame gave a sharp, nervous jingle. A clerk looked up from behind the counter. Thin shoulders, wire spectacles, ink on his fingers. The sort of man who spent his life around ledgers and still somehow looked frightened by numbers. "I need to speak to Mr. Bell," Clara said. "Now." The clerk swallowed. "Miss Whitmore, I already explained yesterday." "Then explain it again." She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and planted both hands on the counter. Her gloves were still cold from the ride into town, her jaw tighter than the seams of her coat. "My brother sent money," she said, "from Santa Fe. He promised it would be here by Tuesday. Today is Wednesday." The clerk shifted his weight uneasily. "I checked the telegram ledger myself, Miss Whitmore. There's no transfer under your family name. No deposit. No wire. Nothing." The words hit hard. Harder because she had already rehearsed them in her own mind a dozen times on the ride in. Harder because part of her had known. Still, hearing them spoken aloud made something deep in her chest turn hollow. "You checked once," she said quietly. "Now check again." The clerk adjusted his spectacles. "Miss Whitmore, check again." He disappeared into the back office. The bank fell silent. Only the ticking wall clock remained. Tick, tick, tick. 3 days. That was what the foreclosure notice had said. 3 days to pay $900, or surrender the Whitmore Ranch to the bank. $900 to save 300 acres along the Rio Piedra. Water rights, grazing land, a weather-beaten house her father had built board by board. Her father had died 2 winters earlier. A bad chest, a cold snap, a stubborn man refusing to leave the pasture until the cattle were secure. Since then, Clara had been keeping the ranch alive with grit, prayer, and not much else. The drought had taken half the herd. The late frost had ruined the hay yield, and every month the bank had grown colder. Her brother Nathan had promised to help, promised money was coming, promised he would not let their father's land be sold off to men who had never lifted a fence post in their lives. He had written it plainly. "You hold on 3 more days, Clara. I'll make this right." 3 more days had turned into 3 more weeks. And now, nothing. The clerk returned, paler than before. He didn't need to speak. Clara knew. "There's no transfer," he said softly. "I'm sorry." Sorry. There was that word again. The one people used when they had nothing useful left to offer. Clara let out a breath through her nose. slow, controlled. Then she straightened. "When is Mr. Bell in?" The clerk hesitated. "He's here, but he won't tell you anything different." "Then let him tell me himself." A voice came from the doorway before the clerk could answer. "Sounds to me like the bank's already told you everything it plans to." Clara turned sharply. A man stood just outside beneath the overhang, one shoulder against the post, hat low, coat travel-worn with red dust along the hem. He looked to be in his early 30s, tall, broad through the chest, the kind of stillness about him that made a room rearrange itself without anyone realizing why. His face was weathered, but not old, his eyes gray, calm. Too calm for a man who had just interrupted a stranger at the worst moment of her life. "And who asked you?" Clara said. He didn't move, didn't smile. "Name's Rowan Hale. Didn't mean to overhear, though you weren't making it especially difficult." The clerk looked relieved that attention had shifted away from him. Clara felt anger rise hot and quick, and for a second she welcomed it. Anger was easier than fear. "If you came in here to enjoy the spectacle," she said, "you're late. The bank already had its turn." Rowan pushed off the post and stepped fully inside. Not swaggering, not showing off, just moving with the measured ease of a man who knew exactly how much room he occupied and never needed to prove it. "I came looking for work," he said. "Ranch work, fence work, cattle, whatever pays honest." He glanced once toward the clerk, then back to her. "And it sounds like you've got trouble." Clara almost laughed, not because anything was funny, because the absurdity of it all had finally caught up with her. "Trouble?" She folded her arms. "I am 3 days from losing my ranch. The bank wants $900 by Friday. My brother promised money and vanished. And some stranger on a bank floor thinks that qualifies as trouble?" Rowan studied her for a moment. Not her dress, not the state of her gloves, not the strain in her face. Her. As if he were measuring something deeper than panic. "How much land?" he asked. Clara blinked. "What?" "How much land?" 300 acres. Good water from the Rio Piedra. A south pasture that still holds in dry months. Timber on the east rise. Then, sharper, why? Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or memory. Gone too quickly to name. "Because land like that doesn't go under by accident," he said quietly. The words settled strangely between them. Too precise, too sure. Clara narrowed her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" Rowan shrugged once. "Means men with money usually smell weakness before a bank does." He said it as if he knew, as if he had seen it happen before. Maybe to someone else, maybe to himself. Outside, a freight wagon rolled past. The sound of iron wheels on frozen dirt echoed through the street. Someone laughed across the way near the feed store. Life went on, as if hers hadn't just cracked open. "I can't afford to hire anyone," Clara said. "Not if that's where this is going." Rowan nodded. "I figured as much. Then, if I came anyway?" She stared at him. "What?" He held her gaze. "If I rode out there anyway, took a look at your stock, your fences, your books, helped you figure what can be sold, what can be saved, and what kind of argument might make a bank hesitate." Clara felt her heartbeat shift. Not faster, heavier. This was absurd. He was a stranger, a drifter by the look of him, a man who had appeared from nowhere with dust on his boots and questions too sharp to be accidental. And yet, he was offering something no one else had. Not pity, not condolences, a plan. "What would you want in return?" she asked. "Work, if there's work to be had." He paused, then added, more quietly, "and maybe the chance to see one honest ranch not get swallowed whole." Clara looked at him hard. There was no easy read in his face, no slick charm, no salesman's grin, just that same unnerving steadiness. It should have made her trust him less. Instead, it made her want to ask the one question she wasn't sure she wanted answered. "Why do you care?" Rowan's jaw tightened almost invisibly. His gaze drifted past her shoulder toward the bank manager's closed office door, then out to the street beyond. When he answered, his voice was lower, quieter. "Well, as I said, I've seen this happen before. Not enough. Not nearly enough." But something in the way he said it made Clara believe there was a real story behind it, a painful one he had no intention of handing over yet. The clerk cleared his throat behind the counter, reminding them both where they stood. The bank, the deadline, the clock. 3 days. Clara turned back toward Rowan. "If I let you come out," she said slowly, "and this turns into another broken promise." His eyes met hers fully. "It won't." She should have rejected him, should have sent him on his way and kept what little pride she had left. But pride didn't pay banks, pride didn't save ranches, and pride had already cost her too much. "The ranch is 8 miles north," she said. "Follow the river road. When you see a split cottonwood beside the bend, turn east. White house, red barn, windmill that complains louder than a church widow." For the first time, the faintest shadow of a smile touched Rowan's mouth. "I'll find it." She stepped past him toward the door, then stopped. Something had been nagging at her since the moment he spoke. A shape in his words, a certainty, a familiarity. She turned slightly. "Mr. Hale." He looked back. "How did you know the bank wouldn't help me?" A beat passed. Just one, but it was enough. Enough for Clara to see that he understood the question beneath the question. Enough to know she had noticed too much. Then he answered, "Because men like that never move until someone gives them a reason. And because men like the one waiting for your land usually make sure of the outcome before the game even starts." Her pulse thudded once, hard. He knew. Maybe not everything, but more than he should. And as Clara stepped back out onto Silver Creek's frostbitten street, one thing settled cold and clear in her mind. If Rowan Hale was telling the truth, someone had already decided her ranch was as good as gone. And if he was lying, she had just invited trouble straight to her door. The ride back to the Whitmore ranch was colder than Clara remembered. Not because of the wind, but because of the man riding a few lengths behind her. Rowan Hale didn't speak much on the road, didn't ask questions, didn't try to fill the silence the way most men did when they found themselves alone with a woman. He just rode, steady, watching the land like it was telling him something. Clara could feel it, that quiet attention, not on her, but on everything around them. The fence lines, the slope of the hills, the way the river bent along the edge of her pasture, as if he was already measuring what was worth saving and what wasn't. By the time they reached the split cottonwood near the bend, the sky had shifted pale and thin, the kind of afternoon light that made everything look more fragile than it really was. Clara slowed her horse. That's the turn. Rowan nodded once. No questions. They followed the narrow track east, dust rising under the horses' hooves. The windmill came into view first, turning slow, creaking exactly the way she had described. Then the house. White paint worn thin, red barn leaning just enough to remind you it had seen better years. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Still hers. For now. Rowan dismounted without waiting to be asked. His boots hit the ground with a quiet thud. He took in the yard with a single sweep of his eyes. Not rushed, not careless. Deliberate. "You've lost cattle," he said. Clara frowned. "What?" He walked toward the corral, ran a hand along the fence rail. "Posts are loose. Wire's been cut and retied in places. Not clean work." Clara slid off her horse. "That's from the last storm," she said quickly. "We had a bad wind come through 2 weeks ago." Rowan shook his head. "Storms don't cut wire like that." He crouched, picked up a piece of twisted metal, held it between his fingers. "Someone opened this, and then closed it again, just enough so you wouldn't notice right away." The words hit different than the bank had. Sharper, more dangerous. Clara felt something tighten low in her chest. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "Why would anyone—" "To thin your herd." She stopped. "What?" Rowan stood, met her eyes. "Cattle wander out, don't come back. Less stock, less value. Easier to say the ranch is failing." Clara shook her head. "No, I would have noticed. Would you?" Rowan didn't say it harsh, just plainly. The kind of question that didn't accuse, but forced you to look closer. Clara turned toward the pasture, the far stretch near the river. She tried to picture the numbers in her head, count what she had, count what she thought she had. Something didn't line up. "You're guessing," she said finally. Rowan nodded once. "I am, but I've seen it before. Men don't always take land with force. Sometimes they just make sure it looks like you're failing, before they step in to save what's left." Clara swallowed. Elias Crow. The name came to her uninvited. The man who had been circling Silver Creek for months, buying land cheap, offering help that never came without strings. "You think someone's doing this to me?" she asked. Rowan didn't answer right away. He looked out across the valley, toward the river, toward the tree line. "I think," he said slowly, "someone's already decided your ranch belongs to them, and now they're just waiting for the paperwork to catch up." The wind picked up, just enough to stir the dry grass, just enough to make the place feel watched. Clara wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "This is insane," she said. "My brother was supposed to send money. That's all this is. A delay. Bad luck." Rowan looked back at her. "Maybe, but bad luck doesn't cut fences in the night." Silence settled between them, heavy, uncomfortable. Clara hated it. Hated how easily he made doubt take root. Hated how part of her believed him. "What do we do?" she asked finally. Rowan exhaled slowly. "First," he nodded toward the barn, "we count everything. Cattle, feed, tools. Then we decide what can be sold fast, what can hold, and what might be worth more than it looks." "And after that?" Clara asked. Rowan's eyes darkened slightly. "After that, we find out who's been touching what doesn't belong to them. A chill moved through Clara that had nothing to do with the wind. This was no longer about money, no longer just a debt. Something was happening to her land, something quiet, deliberate, and the man standing in her yard already knew the shape of it. Clara took a step back, studying him, really studying him this time. "You said you've seen this before," she said. "Where?" Rowan didn't answer, not right away. His gaze drifted past her, to the house, to the land, to something that clearly wasn't here anymore. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. "Heard about it," he said. "Worked near it. Didn't stop it." Not a lie, but not the truth either. Clara felt it instantly. He was holding something back. And for the first time since he stepped into that bank, she wondered if inviting him here had been her first mistake. That night, the wind didn't settle. It shifted, carried something sharper than dust across the valley. Clara felt it before she understood it. The kind of quiet that doesn't mean peace, but waiting. They worked until sunset, counted cattle, checked feed, went through every crate, every ledger, every tool that hadn't been touched in months. And the numbers didn't lie. "You're missing 12 head," Rowan said. 12? Clara turned sharply. "That's not possible. I counted them last week." Rowan shook his head. "Not all at once. Slow. 2 here, 3 there. Spread out so you don't feel it until it's too late." Clara stared at the ledger in her hands. The ink blurred for a moment. 12 cattle. Gone. Without her seeing it. Without her knowing. Without a trace. "This doesn't just happen," she said quietly. "This is theft." Rowan met her eyes. "Yes, it is." The word settled hard between them. Not misfortune, not bad luck. Theft. The sun dropped behind the ridge. Darkness rolled in fast, the kind that made the ranch feel smaller than it was. Rowan lit a lantern near the barn. The glow stretched long shadows across the ground. "Lock everything tonight," he said. "Barn, storage, house. And keep a rifle close." Clara stiffened. "You think someone's coming back?" Rowan didn't answer right away. He looked out toward the tree line, toward the stretch of land that dipped low before the river. "They usually do," he said quietly. A chill ran through her. Not fear, not exactly. Something colder. Certainty. Later that night, Clara couldn't sleep. The house creaked. The wind pressed against the walls. Every sound felt louder than it should, and every silence felt too long. She sat up, listened. Nothing. Then, a voice. Faint, carried by the wind. Clara froze. It came again. Low. Male. Too distant to understand, but close enough to be real. She moved carefully, stepped out of bed, reached for her shawl. Then, another sound. Bootsteps. Outside. Her heart slammed once, hard. She crossed the room slowly, careful not to make a sound, reached the window, lifted the edge of the curtain just enough, and saw movement near the barn. A lantern, not hers, and beside it, 2 figures. Men, talking low. One of them kicked at the fence post Rowan had pointed out earlier. Clara's stomach dropped. He was right. She turned, fast, and grabbed the rifle by the door, but before she could step outside, the door opened. Rowan stood there, already awake, already dressed, like he had been expecting this. "I heard them," she whispered. He nodded once. "Stay inside." "No," she said immediately. "This is my land." Something passed through his eyes. Not surprise, not approval. Recognition. Then he stepped aside. "Then stay behind me." They moved together, quiet, fast, out into the dark. The cold air hit sharp. The lantern near the barn flickered. The men were still there. "Told you she wouldn't notice yet," one of them muttered. "Crow wants it to look natural." Clara stopped, every word hitting like a hammer. Crow. Rowan's hand tightened slightly on his rifle, not in surprise, in confirmation. The second man spat into the dirt. 3 days and it's his anyway. Bank takes it, then sells it right to him, clean as a preacher's hands. Clara's breath caught. The bank. Crow. This wasn't chance. This was planned. Rowan stepped forward, out of the shadows. "That's so." The men spun around. One reached for his gun, then froze. Rowan didn't raise his rifle. Didn't need to. The way he stood, the way he looked at them, was enough. "Ride out," Rowan said calmly. "Now." The men hesitated, measured him. Measured the distance. Then one cursed under his breath. Not worth it. They backed off, mounted, rode hard into the dark. Silence rushed back in, heavy. Clara stood frozen, the rifle still in her hands, her mind racing faster than her breath. "You knew," she said. Rowan didn't turn. "You knew this wasn't just debt." Still nothing. She stepped closer. "You knew about Crow." Now he looked at her, and for the first time there was no distance in his eyes, no calm, no careful control, just truth. Yes. The word landed hard. Clara felt something crack inside her. Not fear. Trust. "How?" she asked. "How did you know all of this before you even set foot on my land?" Rowan exhaled slowly, looked past her, out into the dark where the riders had vanished, then back at her. "Because I've seen Elias Crow take a ranch before, and I didn't stop him." The wind picked up again, carrying dust across the yard. Clara stared at him. "Who are you?" But she didn't ask it, not yet, because something told her she might not like the answer. The fire started before dawn. Not loud, not all at once, just a glow, low against the barn wall. By the time Clara smelled the smoke, it was already too late. She bolted upright in bed, heart racing. The air was wrong, too thick, too hot. Then a shout. "Clara!" Rowan's voice, closer than she expected, louder than she had ever heard it. She threw open the door, and the world was already burning. Flames crawled up the side of the barn like they had been waiting there, hungry, fast. The dry wood caught quick, too quick. Not an accident. "Get back!" Rowan shouted. He was already moving, already hauling water, already dragging a trough toward the flames. Clara didn't think, didn't hesitate. She ran, grabbed a bucket, filled it from the pump with shaking hands. The metal slipped once, clanged, water spilling into the dirt. "No, no!" She grabbed it again, forced herself steady. They worked side by side, throwing water, smothering what they could, trying to hold back something that didn't want to be held. The fire roared louder. A beam cracked, splitting down the middle, and the roof sagged with a groan that felt like the land itself was breaking. "Back!" Rowan grabbed her arm, pulled her away just as the front section collapsed inward. A wave of heat slammed into them. Clara stumbled, nearly fell. He steadied her, held her upright. She stared, helpless, as the barn, her barn, burned. Feed gone, tools gone, half the winter stores gone. The flames painted everything in a violent orange glow, turned the sky into something unrecognizable, like the world had decided to erase her. Clara's hands fell to her sides, the bucket slipping from her fingers, hitting the ground with a hollow thud. "That was deliberate," Rowan said quietly. Clara didn't answer, didn't need to. She already knew. "Crow," she whispered. Rowan nodded once. He's done waiting. The fire burned itself out slowly, left behind blackened beams, smoke, ash drifting through the air like snow. By sunrise, there was nothing left to save. Clara stood in the yard, arms wrapped tight around herself, eyes fixed on what used to be part of her life. Her shoulders didn't shake. No tears. Just stillness. "I'm done," she said. Rowan looked at her. "What?" "I'm done fighting this." Her voice didn't break, didn't rise. It just emptied. They've already won. The bank takes the land. Crow buys it. Clean. Simple. She turned slightly, not toward him, toward the road. "I don't have anything left to fight with." Silence stretched, heavy. Rowan took a step closer. "You still have the land. For 2 more days. That's not enough." "It is if we make it enough." Clara let out a quiet, humorless breath. "You don't understand." "No," Rowan said. "I understand exactly." She turned then, fast. "No, you don't. You didn't grow up here. You didn't bury family here. You didn't watch everything you love get picked apart piece by piece while people smile and tell you it's just business." Her voice cracked, just once. "Don't tell me you understand." Rowan didn't move, didn't interrupt. He let the words land, let the anger burn itself out. Then, quietly, "I lost a ranch the same way." Clara froze. "What?" "Different name, different valley, same kind of men. They took it slow, cut the herd, pressed the bank, waited until I couldn't breathe without owing someone something." His voice didn't rise, didn't shake. That made it worse. It was real. "And you let them?" Clara asked. Rowan's jaw tightened. "I didn't know what I was fighting until it was over. And by then, there was nothing left to save." Silence. Clara looked at him differently now, not as a stranger, not as a drifter, as someone who had already stood where she was standing, and lost. "Then why stay?" she asked. "You could have left this morning." "You could have walked away from all of this." Rowan met her eyes. "Because I didn't stop it last time, and I'm not walking away from it again." The words settled deep. Not a promise, not exactly. Something heavier. A decision. Clara looked back at the ruins of the barn, at the smoke still curling into the sky. 2 days, that was all that remained. "This isn't just about money anymore," she said. Rowan shook his head. "No, it never was." She turned back to him. What do we do now? Rowan's eyes hardened slightly, not with anger, with purpose. Now, we stop waiting, and we make him show his hand. Clara felt something shift inside her. Not hope, not yet, but something close. Something that refused to stay broken. Behind them, the ashes of the barn cooled in the morning light, and ahead of them, the fight had finally begun. They didn't wait for the bank. They went straight to it. At sunrise, 2 riders crossed the valley road toward town. Clara didn't look back, not at the ashes, not at what was lost, only at what was still hers. Rowan rode beside her, silent, focused. Whatever he was planning, he hadn't said. But she trusted one thing now. He wasn't guessing. By the time they reached town, word had already spread. About the fire, about the missing cattle, about Crow's quiet interest in her land. Men stood outside the bank, watching, waiting. Elias Crow was already there. Dressed clean, pressed coat, gold watch at his vest. Like nothing had burned, like nothing had been taken. Like everything was already his. "Well," Crow said smoothly as they approached, "Miss Whitlock. Shame about your barn." Clara didn't answer, didn't slow. She stepped inside the bank, Rowan just behind her. The banker looked up, nervous, too nervous. "You're here about the note," he said quickly. "Payment is due tomorrow." "I know," Clara said. "I'm here to settle it." Crow stepped in behind them. "Well now, this should be interesting." Clara reached into her coat and placed a folded document on the desk. The banker frowned, opened it, then went still. "This," he stammered, "this is a transfer order." Clara held his gaze. "Yes, signed by the Cheyenne Land Office, filed 2 months ago." Crow's smile faded, just slightly. "That land is collateral," he said. "She has no authority to—" "She does," Rowan said. Crow turned slowly, looked at him properly for the first time. Recognition flickered. Too late. "You," Crow said, "thought you left the territory." Rowan stepped forward, calm, controlled. "I did. After I watched you do this to someone else." The room tightened. "What exactly are you claiming?" the banker asked. Rowan nodded once toward the paper. That the debt was manipulated. Livestock losses forced. Property devalued. Then purchased through a third party. He let the words hang. Which leads right back to him. Crow laughed, sharp, dismissive. "You've got no proof." Rowan didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat, pulled out a small leather book, set it on the desk. Clara recognized it instantly. The ledger, the one Rowan had been writing in. "Records," Rowan said. "Dates, names, cattle taken, payments made through shell buyers, and witnesses." The banker flipped pages, faster, then slower. His face changed. "You've been building a case," he said quietly. Rowan nodded once. "Yes, for a long time." Crow's jaw tightened. "This is speculation," he snapped. "You think a book and a story will be enough?" Rowan finished. "No. That's why I brought the sheriff." The door opened behind them. Bootsteps, heavy. Sheriff Dalton stepped in, hat low, eyes sharp. "And I've been waiting on this," he said. Silence. Crow didn't move, didn't speak, but the room had already shifted. Power had changed hands. "Mr. Crow," the sheriff said, "I'm going to need you to come with me." Crow looked at Clara, really looked, for the first time without confidence, without control. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Clara held his gaze. "It is for me." He said nothing more, turned, walked out, and for the first time since this began, he was the one leaving. The bank fell quiet. The banker cleared his throat. "The note," he said slowly, "is void. The land remains yours, Miss Whitlock." Clara didn't move, didn't speak, because it didn't feel real. Not yet. Then Rowan stepped closer. "It's yours." And something inside her finally let go. They rode back in silence, but not the same silence. This one was lighter, earned. The ranch came into view, scarred, burned, still standing. Clara slowed her horse, looked out across it. Still hers. Rowan dismounted first, walked toward the remains of the barn, kicked at a charred beam. "Going to take work," he said. Clara joined him. "I know." He glanced at her. "You staying?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out across the land, the fences, the hills, the sky stretching endless above it. Then back at him. "Yes." A beat. "And you?" Rowan exhaled slowly, looked down, then back at her. "If you'll have me." Clara stepped closer, not rushed, not uncertain, just sure. "I think you've already stayed." The wind moved gently across the valley. No fire, no smoke, just air, clean, open. Some stories begin in dust and silence, some in fire, but this one was built in something harder: choice, trust, and a man who came back to finish what he once walked away from. The West didn't forgive easily, but sometimes it gave you one more chance to stand your ground. And this time, they did.